I'm Andre Hoffman from the South African Institute of Electrical Engineers. Our mission is to look after the interests of the professional engineer, technologist, technician, even the students as they go through their career in electrical engineering. We're here today at the Innes House. We call it Innes House because it's named after Dr. Robert Innes, who was the Union Observer. It's a Herbert Baker designed building that we're converting into a museum. We're sitting actually in one of the rooms, and this particular room has an archive of many of the historical elements that define what electrical engineers do in certain aspects. And this is the computer room, and you'll see behind me a number of old things called valves. Today people use integrated circuits, and they used to use transistors and still have transistors, but they're also computers, hard drives, calculators. And we felt it was important to the young engineer and technologist today to understand where we came from. And there's been many historical important things that have occurred even in South Africa that we've tried to keep an archive and a record of in this museum. There's an abacus, and working your way down there's various calculators. So there's the Hewlett-Packard. Many of us who were students in the 80s will remember that very, very complicated thing. It was a desire for all of us to get one of those. You'll see it's about the size of a brick. Today's mobile phones have got more technology and capability on them than some of these old devices. In this cabinet we also see things like slide rules and cylinders that were used to create the ability to calculate, and we also had logarithmic tables that some of your fathers and grandparents will certainly know about. And there we have a ZX81 and also the ZX Spectrum. These were very early entrants into the computer world. They were very exciting toys to have for the young engineer in the early 80s. Here we have mechanical calculators, which were very early examples of what people used to use in shops and in businesses. What would a computer display be without Apple? Apple is an iconic device today, but that's what an Apple looked like in the very, very early days. And we scan across to see some more 1980s hardware, large screen displays, monochromatic displays, hard drives, keyboards, very bulky equipment, but nevertheless very exciting equipment for its day. So here we're looking at some early hard disks, and you'll see how big and bulky they were in the very early days of computing. I'm not sure what size that one is, but it was probably 10 megabytes or something of that nature. So this is our radio ham room, and you're looking at examples of different transmitters and receivers. The one that you see in the middle here is a very important one. It's got an example of the Wadley receiver. And the Wadley receiver, Trevor Wadley was a South African engineer who developed the Wadley receiver, and it became the first model. You see is the one on the left, and that was the one that he made out of handmade one, and that was used to receive radio signals in the 1960s. And there's an example of a 1929 style Hartley TNT transmitter, and you can see the inner workings of how a transmitter works, including the valve and the amplification and the frequency signaling. Everything is built in a nice board that you can see exactly how it all comes together. And as part of the Innes House SAIEE Museum, we also have a radio shack. The South African Amateur Radio League have established a radio transmitter from the site. It is RS.074 SAIEE, recently established, and as part of the South African Amateur Radio League, they do have transmissions from here regularly, and they do have meetings here as well. So this is a measuring device that was invented by Trevor Wadley, the South African engineer that I told you about, that in the early days was used for determining distance and measuring accurately a distance using radio signals and radio waves. It actually belongs to the CSIR, and it's on loan here, and it's part of our museum, and there's a photo at the back of Trevor Wadley using the device. It's called a telerometer. So here we have an example of a Morse key, which in my father's day was very important because he was a signaller in the army. They used to use Morse code, which was used on a telegraph line. And because the signals were very simple, in a way digital, they used to be able to send messages over long distances using this kind of technology. Today we use telephones and SMS and all these wonderful things, but that's how it used to be done in our grandparents' day. When the Titanic was sinking, they would have sent out a signal called SOS, Save Our Souls, which is ... dash, 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 ... and that's the simplest signal to know in Morse code.